They said they wanted me there, swore it wouldn't be the same without me. Fly out, Grandma, we want you here for Thanksgiving. So I did. I packed the pie dish, my cardigan, every ounce of softness I had left. And then I waited. I stood at Gate 3A of Chicago O'Hare Airport, beneath the arrival sign, my small wheeled suitcase beside me, coat folded neatly over one arm. People hurried past with flowers, balloons, kids holding signs. Some hugged, some cried. Everyone was being claimed. I stood like a misplaced package. The flight had landed 42 minutes ago. I'd checked twice and reread my daughter-in-law's text 3 times. We'll be there. The kids can't wait to see you. I had replied, flight lands at 3:10. Can't wait to hug everyone. No answer. I kept my coat folded. Sitting felt like giving up, like admitting I'd been forgotten. My phone buzzed. Not a call or even a text, just a social media alert. My heart still jumped. Sometimes my family posts pictures before remembering to call. I opened the app. There they were. My son Mark wearing the navy sweater I sent him last year. His wife Jessica, tan and smiling big as always. The kids, Evan and Lila, sat at a table with candles, turkey, mashed potatoes, and a pie that wasn't mine. Glasses raised, the caption read, "Full house, full hearts. Happy Thanksgiving from our family to yours." I looked again. No mistake. No space for me at that table. I didn't cry. Not then. I slipped on my coat and walked out of the terminal, past taxis and shuttle signs. I didn't know where I was going, only that I wouldn't wait for them to remember me. 3 days before my flight, Mark had called. That alone should have warned me. My son doesn't usually call unless there's a birthday, a bill, or a reason. But this time his voice was syrupy smooth. "Hey Mom, doing anything for Thanksgiving?" I said I planned to stay home, roast a small chicken, maybe bake a pie if my hands cooperated, watch an old movie, just me and the radio. He paused, calculating something. "Well, the kids were asking about you. Thought maybe you'd like to come this year. Everyone will be together. It wouldn't feel right without you." That part, "wouldn't feel right without you," did something to me. It had been so long since I felt wanted. Needed, yes. Called on, depended on, but wanted? Rarely. So I said yes. I didn't ask him to book the ticket or help pay. I used the Christmas money I'd saved for emergencies. This felt like one. I booked the ticket that evening, found a nonstop on sale, and even paid $12 extra for more legroom. Silly, maybe, but if I was traveling halfway across the country, I wanted a little comfort. The next day I went shopping. I bought 2 books for the kids, a box of dark chocolate Jessica likes and something for myself. A navy blue cardigan, soft wool, draping just right at the hips, the kind that makes you feel like maybe you belong in the picture too. I packed 3 days early, checked the weather in Chicago, set the heat low, took out the trash. I didn't tell my bridge group. They'd only ask questions. Maybe I didn't want to jinx it. It had been so long since someone said, "Come, we want you here." Thanksgiving morning, the airport was crowded. Rolling bags, headphones, pillows shaped like animals. I smiled at a baby across the aisle, shared a quiet look with an older woman reading a paperback. Both of us sat with hands folded, stories unspoken. When the plane landed, I smoothed my skirt, brushed crumbs from my lap, and slipped on my good black shoes, the ones with the tiny heel. I wanted to look like the kind of woman you invite. And for a while I believed I was. The walk from baggage claim felt heavier than usual. Maybe it was the suitcase, maybe something else. I rolled past coffee kiosks, happy reunions, a young woman crying with joy into her boyfriend's shoulder. I didn't feel bitter, just paused, like life was moving while I stood still. Outside, the gray Midwestern sky made the air feel heavy. No texts. No missed calls. It was 3:54 p.m. Dinner probably wouldn't start until 5 or 6. Maybe they were busy, maybe the turkey needed basting. Harmless reasons still sting when you're standing alone. I waited on the curb another 20 minutes before my knees began to ache. I sat watching strangers climb into cars that knew their names. A woman in a puffy jacket brought her mother-in-law hot chocolate and a hug. She looked older than me. That hug, brief, tight, real, landed hard in my chest. I tried calling Mark. No answer. I left a message, "I've landed. At door B under the airplane sign. Hope everything's okay. I'll wait a little longer." But I already knew. Before reopening the app I knew. The cranberry sauce, the long table, the caption about hearts full. It told me everything. It wasn't the first time I'd been forgotten, but it was the first time I admitted it. I stood, brushed off my coat, pulled my suitcase behind me. No cab. No Uber. Just me and the sidewalk. A man pushing a stroller offered a tired smile. I nodded back. Funny how strangers can make you feel more seen than your own family. It was nearly 5. The air had turned sharper, the kind of chill that slides under your collar and asks, "What now?" I didn't answer. I kept walking. My shoes weren't made for long walks, but I didn't stop. Half a mile later, past a car rental return, I saw it. A squat little building with a flickering neon sign, Tina's Diner. Paper turkeys were taped to fogged windows. I went in. The bell jingled. Inside smelled of hot grease and cinnamon. Vinyl booths, yellowed menus, a counter with cracked stools. 6 people inside. A man in a UPS jacket, an older couple eating in silence, a waitress with a short ponytail who looked up and said, "Happy Thanksgiving, hun." "Same to you," I said, surprised at how steady my voice sounded. I picked a booth by the window, slid in. The seat was warm, the table clean. I pulled off my coat. "Kitchen's slow today," the waitress said, handing me a menu, "but we've got turkey and pie." "Pie sounds good," I said. "What kind?" He grinned. "Pumpkin, pecan, or key lime." "Pumpkin and some tea, please." "You got it." I looked out the window while I waited. My suitcase sat beside me like an obedient dog. My phone, face down on the table, vibrated once. I didn't flip it over. The pie came warm, whipped cream leaning to one side. The tea was strong and slightly bitter, just the way I like it. I took a bite, then another. Best pie I'd had in years. Maybe not because of spices or crust. Maybe because for once I hadn't made it for anyone else. I ate slowly. I didn't rush. I didn't scroll. I didn't wait for anyone to walk in and say it was a mistake. They weren't coming. Not today. Maybe not ever. And still there I was, whole, breathing, sitting under paper turkeys, letting the heat return to my fingers. When the waitress brought the check, she asked, "Want another slice to go?" I thought for a moment, then nodded. "Yes, for later." She winked. "Best decision you'll make all day." I smiled, not because it was funny but because she was right. The air felt sharper when I stepped outside. The little white bag with my second slice of pie dangled from one hand, my suitcase rattling softly behind me. I had no plan, no hotel booked, no one waiting, but I didn't feel lost. Not exactly. There's a kind of peace when you stop expecting the people who hurt you to fix it. The wind picked up as I walked. The nearest budget motel wasn't far. I'd seen the sign trudging from the airport. Valley Inn, weekly rates, beige paint, a vending machine by the door. Nothing fancy, but it had lights on, and right now that was enough. Inside, a man behind the counter watched football on a tiny TV. His face was bored, oily from fryer grease. "Need a room?" he asked. "Yes, just one night." "Single," I said, glancing at my scuffed shoes, my cardigan faintly smelling of airplane. He slid a form across. "ID and card." I handed them over. On the TV, a team in red and gold was losing badly, but he didn't care. "Room 114, he said, giving me a key on a flimsy ring. End of the row. The room was what I expected. 2 mismatched lamps, a muted brown bedspread, a TV older than both my kids. But it was warm, the heater worked, and the bathroom was surprisingly clean. I peeled off my shoes, sat on the bed. My feet ached. My back ached more. But my heart, the part that should have been shattered, felt oddly intact. I stared at my phone for a long time before turning it over. 3 missed calls from Mark, 2 from Jessica, and 1 text. "Mom, where are you?" No apology, no explanation, just confusion, as if I had forgotten to show up. I didn't reply. Instead, I unzipped my suitcase, pulled out my notebook, the one for grocery lists and thoughts I never say out loud, and wrote on a fresh page. I am not spare. I am not extra. I am not a side dish at someone else's table. I stared at the sentence, then underlined it. A year ago, even 5 years ago, I would have cried. Tonight, the tears wouldn't come. What came instead was a strange clarity, like stepping into cold water. Tucking but clean. It wasn't just this dinner or the airport. It was the years leading to it. Missed birthdays. Unanswered voicemails. Invitations that always sounded like obligations, never joy. I thought of Christmas 2 years ago when Jessica said, "We'd love to have you over if it's not too much trouble." I'd made them a ham and taken the bus. I thought of Mark's 40th. I sent him an engraved leather wallet, and he replied with a group text, "Thanks for the gifts, everyone." I remembered Lila's school play, how I found the live stream myself and watched alone on my laptop with wine and a lump in my throat. She didn't know I was watching. Nobody mentioned it. And still I kept showing up until today. Maybe it takes standing alone on a curb in another city to finally see what's been there all along. I wasn't part of their life. I was an accessory, a convenience, a placeholder for when they wanted to feel like better people. I looked around the motel room. Ugly, honest, functional. It was the most honest place I'd been in years. I made motel tea with the plastic coffee machine, sat cross-legged on the bed with my second slice of pie. No china plate, no linen napkin, just a paper bag and a plastic fork. And yet it tasted like something I'd earned. The ceiling had a hairline crack running above the bed like a road map. I stared at it while the heater wheezed and kicked. Outside, the wind scraped at the siding, a car engine rumbled now and then, and a man 2 rooms over coughed miserably. Somewhere a toilet flushed. It wasn't peaceful, but it was honest. Around 2 a.m. I finally drifted off, the scratchy blanket pulled to my chin, my notebook still open on the nightstand. I slept in the clothes I'd arrived in, too tired to change, too weary to unpack. By morning I woke before sunrise as I always do. Even retired, my body insists on being useful by 6. I made weak coffee from the in-room machine and watched the sky lighten through the blinds. The pie was gone, the tea too, but the quiet stayed. At 7:12 my phone buzzed. Mom, I'm so sorry. There was confusion with the pickup. We thought your flight was tomorrow. Can you come today? The kids really want to see you. That was from Mark. No mention of the photo. No apology for posting a Thanksgiving without me. Just confusion and, can you? I stared at the message, then set the phone down. I didn't answer. Instead I got dressed, brushed my hair, dabbed on lipstick. Not for them. I wasn't going. It was for me, for dignity. A reminder that I still decide how I present myself, even if no one's looking. The lobby had bruised apples in a bowl and burnt coffee in a carafe. I took an apple, slipped it into my bag, checked out. The man behind the counter barely looked up from his football recap. Outside the air was cold and clean. The wind had calmed. The sky was a brittle November blue, sharp and endless. I didn't head to the airport right away. Instead I walked. There was something I needed to do first. A mile down the road, tucked between a gas station and a closed tire shop, was a little postal annex. I stepped inside and asked for an envelope and a stamp. The clerk, a young woman with chipped nail polish, smiled kindly as she handed them over. I addressed the envelope from memory. Emma Wexler, 12 Pond Hollow Lane, Worcester, Massachusetts 06009. My granddaughter. Emma, Mark's daughter from his first marriage. The only one who still called me just to talk. She's 23 now, finishing nursing school, sends me cat pictures, tells me when she passes exams, asks for my cornbread stuffing recipe. I paused, then pulled a page from my notebook and began writing. Emma dear, you once told me I was your safe place. Hearing that meant more to me than almost anything in this world. This Thanksgiving didn't go as planned. I flew across the country for a table I was never meant to sit at. But I found something in the quiet I didn't expect. Room to remember who I am without waiting for someone else to say it first. I wrote more, not bitter, not dramatic, just real. When I sealed the envelope I felt lighter. At 10:35 I booked a ticket home. Same airline, same gate, but a different woman boarding. The flight wasn't until evening, so I found a cafe near the terminal with big windows and good scones. I sat for hours with tea and a pen, going over things left unspoken too long. I didn't write to Mark. I didn't call Jessica. I didn't tell them where I was. Maybe they'd see the missed call. Maybe they'd wonder. Maybe not. I wasn't angry. I was done. Around 4 p.m., the light changed to that golden haze that makes even parking lots look beautiful. I watched a little boy run toward a minivan, his backpack bouncing. He turned, waved at his grandmother. She smiled, slower, but he grabbed her hand like it was his anchor. I watched until they disappeared, then whispered, not bitter, just clear. I deserved that too. The plane home was half full, a blessing. I had a whole row to myself. The window seat was cold and I left it that way. I didn't bother folding my coat or smoothing the seat belt yet. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the need to make myself neat for someone else's comfort. The flight attendant offered a soft smile. Heading home or leaving it? She asked, placing a plastic cup of water on my tray. Both, I said. In a way. She didn't ask for more, just nodded and moved on. That quiet kind of understanding. Rare, kind enough. I stared out the window during takeoff, watching the gray city shrink, the runways crisscrossing like faded scars. As the plane lifted, the sky opened wider, blue above and below, nothing in between but the dull hum of the engines and my own breathing. I thought I might feel grief again, waited for it like turbulence, but it didn't come. I didn't feel peace either, not yet, but I felt still, rooted, present. That was new. Halfway through the flight, I pulled my phone from my bag, pretending I only wanted the time. Of course, notifications poured in. 4 texts from Mark, 1 voicemail. Mom, I'm really sorry. Please call me. The kids were asking where you were. Jessica said she thought you knew we moved dinner up a day. Can we talk? I didn't open the voicemail, didn't delete it either. Let it sit. Let it wait the way I had. I switched the phone off again. When we landed, it was dark. My little city glowed quiet and familiar. The shuttle driver, an older man with a twinkle in his eye, asked if I'd been visiting family. I smiled. Not exactly. At home, the porch light was still on. I had left it that way out of habit, as if expecting to return tired and full from family warmth. Instead, I walked in with pieces in my bag and a mind sharper than it had been in years. The house smelled like lavender and old wood. The radiator kicked on with a comforting clank. I set down my suitcase, hung up my coat, moving slowly, not from age but intention. I made chamomile tea and sat at the same kitchen table where I'd hosted years of Thanksgivings. Mark once spilled gravy here, Emma once cut snowflakes from napkins, and Jessica had sat tight-lipped, looking at her phone more than at me. I looked around like it belonged to someone I was still meeting. Then I opened the drawer by the fridge, the one with files labeled Mark, Emma, and legal. I pulled out Mark's folder, thick with receipts, tuition copies, a mechanic's invoice I paid when his transmission failed, the 2010 mortgage co-signing, the preschool deposit I fronted for Lila with a note in Jessica's handwriting. We'll pay you back after the bonus hits. They never did. I turned each page carefully, tending to wounds, not angry, not sad, just clear. I reached for Emma's thinner folder. Birthday cards, photos she mailed, her college graduation announcement, bubbly handwritten notes, a thank you for covering a course fee, a postcard from Vermont. Wish you were here. Fall is wild and wonderful. I closed both folders and sat back. Then I opened my notebook. This time I didn't write feelings. I wrote a plan. The next morning I was at the bank before it opened. A light frost coated the steps. I climbed them slowly but steady, wearing my oldest boots and the same navy cardigan. It didn't match my scarf, but I no longer cared about appearances. I cared about action. Inside, a young teller with kind eyes greeted me politely. Good morning, Mrs. Wexler. How can we help you? I'd like to speak with someone about my accounts. All of them. A few minutes later, I was in a glass-walled office with soft chairs and the faint smell of printer ink. A woman named Natalie, calm and professional, introduced herself as my account manager. What can I do for you today, Mrs. Wexler? Suspend all automatic payments. Everyone starting today. She blinked. All of them. Yes. She tapped a few keys, scanning the screen. You have recurring transfers to family members, tuition payments, car insurance, and scheduled gifts to charities. Keep the charities. Stop the rest. She hesitated. Do you want to talk about why? I looked at her. To her credit, she didn't fill the silence. No. I've spent enough time explaining myself. She nodded. Understood. While she worked, I sat in the quiet, watching through the window. A mother wrangling a toddler, an older man with a walker, a delivery truck idling too long. Done, Natalie finally said. Everything's suspended. I'll prepare paperwork for full cancellation if you want to sign tomorrow. I will. She hesitated again. There's also a power of attorney on file, Gregory Wexler. Do you still want him to have access? My pulse didn't rise. No. Revoke it. She printed the form. I signed with steady hands. By the time I left, the frost had melted. I didn't rush. I stopped at the bakery, bought myself a fresh roll, and walked the long way home. It wasn't about punishing Mark. Not really. It was about drawing a line where I hadn't before. About realizing love doesn't grow from sacrifice alone. It needs light. It needs truth. At home, I washed the pie dish and put it away. Maybe someday I'd bake again. Maybe not. But I wouldn't bake for people who left me standing on a curb. That afternoon I called my lawyer. Mr. Altman had handled our affairs for over 30 years, helped us buy the house, settle my husband's will, even draft my first in 2005. His voice was warm but cautious. "Mrs. Wexler, what can I do for you?" "I'd like to make changes to my estate," I said. "And I want to establish a trust for Emma." He didn't ask why. Lawyers like him have seen every version of family disappointment. We set a time for the next day. When I hung up, I felt no triumph, no victory, just clarity. That night, I sat on the porch with a blanket and tea cooling on the railing. Neighbors passed by. One waved, one didn't. The street was quiet. I felt, not healed but steady, like I'd finally stopped knocking on a door that would never open. The next morning, the sky was soft and pale, winter gray wrapping the houses like gauze. At 9 sharp, I sat in Mr. Altman's office, a 2-story building with green shutters and a faint smell of old paper. Same gold-framed family photos, same ticking wall clock. He stood when I entered, polite as always. "Mrs. Wexler," he said, shaking my hand. "Good to see you, Mr. Altman." We sat in the same leather chairs as 20 years ago. His glasses were thicker now, his mustache snow white. "What are we changing today?" "I will," I said. "And I want to trust. Everything I own, every cent, every asset goes to Emma. Only Emma." He nodded. "I assume we're removing Gregory and Jessica?" "Yes. They've had enough from me. More than enough." "And the trust?" "Airtight. No loopholes. Emma is the beneficiary. She can access it for education, housing, healthcare, or emergencies. I'll decide what counts as an emergency." Altman smiled faintly. "You've thought this through." "I have." "And your home pension CDs, all of it?" "If my name's on it, it goes to the trust." "And you want full control while living?" "Of course." He leaned back. "Emma's a good girl. Always was." I felt something tighten in my throat. She's the only one who still sees me as a person, not a purse. Mr. Altman didn't flinch at the bitterness in my voice. "Then let's make sure your wishes are honored." For the next hour we went through every item. He asked questions, I gave firm answers. No more uncertainty. No more benefit of the doubt. When we finished, he gathered the papers into a folder, looking at me with something close to admiration. "I'll have the final draft ready in a few days," he said. "We'll get it notarized and it'll be done." "Thank you," I said, meaning it. Outside, the air had turned crisp. I walked home slowly, stopping once to buy a small poinsettia at the florist. I didn't decorate much anymore, but I wanted something bright on the kitchen table. Something alive. The moment I stepped through the door, the phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. "Grandma." It was Emma. Her voice was breathy, nervous, warm. "I got your letter." I sat at the table. "You did?" "I didn't know what happened. Dad and Jessica said you canceled your flight last minute. They made it sound like you just changed your mind." "Of course they did. I was there," I said softly. "I landed. I waited. I saw the photos." Emma went quiet. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I know, sweetheart. That's not on you. I should have called. You didn't know. You're not the one who made that choice." He sniffled. "I missed you so much that day. It didn't feel right without you." For the first time since the airport, tears stung, but they didn't fall. "Thank you. That means more than you know." There was a silence, not awkward, just full. "Grandma," she said finally, "can I come visit next weekend? I have a break from classes. I'll take the train." My heart bloomed, gentle and painful. "Of course. The guest room is ready." "I'll bring the chessboard," she said. "You still play?" I never stopped. We hung up a few minutes later. I sat there, hand on the phone. For once, I didn't feel forgotten. I felt seen. That Saturday just afternoon, I stood at the train station in my warmest coat, watching passengers step off the 11:37 from Worcester. The platform smelled of diesel and old rain. I clutched a paper bag with a sandwich and an apple, just in case she'd forgotten to eat. And then she was there. Emma came off the train in an oversized hoodie and jeans, her dark curls tucked under a beanie, a worn canvas bag over her shoulder. She looked older, sharper, but when she spotted me, her face lit up, pure and unmistakable. She rushed over and hugged me like she meant it. Simple. No questions, no apologies, no tension, just her arms tight around me. "Hi, Grandma," she whispered. "Hi, baby," I said. "You're here." We drove home mostly in silence. She watched the streets like she was memorizing them again. I drove slowly, letting her take it in. The neighborhood hadn't changed much, but it felt different with her beside me. Back at the house, I made tea while she dropped her bag in the guest room. She came back with the ease of someone who belonged, curling up in the couch corner like she'd never left. The chessboard waited on the coffee table. We played. She won the first game, I won the second. Later we sat at the kitchen table, both nursing mugs of tea. The poinsettia sat in the middle, still red, still alive. "I read your letter again on the train," she said, tracing the mug's rim. "I've never seen you write like that." "I've never had to," I said. "I used to think being quiet was grace, but maybe it just made me easy to ignore." Emma looked up. "I never ignored you." "I know." She hesitated. "Dad doesn't know I'm here." "I figured. He called a couple nights ago, asked if I'd seen you. I didn't lie, I just said we hadn't talked yet." "That was kind." She shook her head. "Not kindness. Exhaustion. I'm tired of pretending things are normal." That surprised me. Emma had always been careful, diplomatic, the peacekeeper. But hearing her steady voice told me she was growing into something strong. "You don't have to pretend here," I said. "Neither do you." We sat in silence, sipping tea. For the first time in weeks, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I didn't need Mark or Jessica to grovel or explain or send another too-late invitation. I had this, my house, my tea, my granddaughter. I had myself. That evening, Emma offered to make dinner. She cooked pasta with garlic and spinach while I grated cheese. We talked about everything and nothing. Later we watched a silly movie, laughing too hard at parts that weren't really funny. Before bed she sat beside me on the couch. "Grandma, I don't want to lose you." "You won't." "I can't promise forever," I said, "but I'm not going anywhere yet." She smiled, hugged me again, gentler but no less real. After she went to sleep, I sat in the quiet living room, the clock ticking behind me. I looked at the mantel photos, some faded, some frames empty, but one still stood tall. Me holding Emma as a baby. My hair darker, my face softer, but my grip steady even then. I stared a long time, then turned off the light and went to bed. Emma left Sunday afternoon. We lingered on the porch before her train. I handed her leftover pasta, a scarf I'd knitted last winter, and a quiet love I didn't need to explain. She kissed my cheek, promised to call Tuesday. Then she was gone, a quick wave from the back window, her breath fogging the glass. I stood until the train disappeared, then went inside. The house felt quieter but not lonely, the kind of silence that follows after something important has been said. I moved slowly, folding the couch blanket, picking up mugs, placing the chessboard back on the shelf. In the kitchen I opened the drawer again. The files were where I left them. Mark's folder still thick, Emma's still light. But now it wasn't just about them, it was about me. I pulled out a yellow notepad and began listing everything I'd paid for in 15 years. Not just money given directly, but what I quietly covered. Home repairs, medical deductibles, legal fees, the down payment for their second car, groceries when Jessica was too tired, school fundraisers I'd sign checks for instead of visiting. Line by line I wrote it down. By the end the list stretched over 4 pages. I'd never thought of myself as generous, just useful, reliable. That's what mothers do. But seeing the numbers I understood, I'd subsidized their life. And in return they gave me politeness. Hollow birthdays. Tired smiles. A chair near the coat rack when there was no room at the main table. I wasn't angry. I was just done. At 3:17 p.m. my phone rang. Mark's name. I didn't pick up. A minute later a voicemail, then a text. "Hi Mom. Just checking in. Hope everything's okay. Let me know when you're free to talk." No urgency, no specifics, just a vague nudge as if nothing had happened. I deleted the voicemail. Left the text unread. That night I lit a candle. Not for a holiday, just for stillness, for the quiet house, for the way the light caught the kitchen counter's edge. I poured a glass of good wine, one I'd been saving for a real holiday. I set a single place at the table, heated up a bowl of leftover soup and ate quietly. No scrolling, no waiting, no hoping for a call, just sitting fully in my own life. Before bed I checked my email, opened the travel folder, and scrolled to the receipt for my Thanksgiving flight. Round trip. Completed. I forwarded it to myself with a subject line that simply read, "Proof of departure and return." No rescue, no reunion, just me. I didn't send it to anyone else. There was no need. The next morning I called Mr. Altman again. I've been thinking, I told him. I want to add a clause to the trust. Of course, he said. What did you have in mind? Emma will be the sole executor and I want a personal letter attached. Not legal, just something that explains why. You can include a statement of intent, he replied. It won't change the legality, but it can say what you need it to say. Good. I'll write it. That morning I began, to whoever is reading this after I'm gone. If you're wondering why things are divided this way, understand, it's not punishment. It's honesty. I gave quietly, consistently. But love without respect isn't love. Presence without care isn't family. I chose the one person who saw me before I vanished. I didn't rush to finish. Some words deserve to come slowly. Tuesday passed without a call from Emma, exactly as planned. She had clinicals that week, said she'd call Friday evening. I trusted her. Instead, someone else reached out. Jessica's name lit up my phone, bright as a warning. I let it ring. 30 seconds later, a text appeared. Hi Irene. Hope you're well. Mark says you've been hard to reach. Let's catch up soon. Catch up. No punctuation where it mattered. No warmth where it counted. We weren't old colleagues. We weren't neighbors who once borrowed sugar. I'd been her mother-in-law for 15 years. I helped her get her first job after Lila was born, sent baskets when she had surgery, even paid for her mother's funeral flowers. No. Catch up. I set the phone down. That afternoon another text came, this time from Mark. Mom, Jessica tried calling. We're starting to get worried. Just let us know you're okay. The irony. They weren't worried when I stood at an airport curb with frozen fingers, or when they posted that photo with everyone's arms wrapped around each other, no chair left for me. But silence makes people uneasy when they're used to your constant yes. I turned the phone off for the rest of the day. Later, I climbed into the attic, not out of drama, just to find an old recipe book Emma had asked about, the one with my apple crisps scribbled in the margins. The air smelled like dust and pine, insulation curled in yellowed layers. In a box marked 1990 to 2005 I found the book, and under it letters. Dozens. Birthday cards from Mark as a teen, drawings from Emma as a little girl, thank you notes from friends long gone, even a photo of my husband holding a pumpkin pie like a trophy. I sat cross-legged on the floor, letting the past rest in my lap. I thought about Mark as a boy, how he used to sleep with his head on my chest because your heart is louder than the rain. How he cried if I left for work too early. How I taught him to tie his shoes with 2 loops instead of 1 because it made more sense to him. I had loved him completely once. Maybe I still did. But love doesn't excuse neglect, and forgiveness doesn't mean going back. I closed the box carefully. That night, when the house was dark and quiet, I added 2 more lines to the letter for the trust. Emma, you saw me not from duty, not for what I gave, but because you chose to. That's what family is: choice, respect, truth. The pen felt heavier than usual, but I wrote anyway. The next day I drove into town and headed straight to the notary in a small shipping store, past bubble wrap shelves and racks of novelty cards. The man behind the counter, his tag read, Dev, had kind hands and a careful way of speaking. I need to notarize a letter, I said, handing him the pages and trust documents. He glanced at the first page, then at me. Big changes. I nodded. Long overdue ones. He didn't ask more. Just handed me a pen and guided me through each signature with quiet efficiency, like someone who has watched countless endings and beginnings cross his counter. When it was done I felt lighter. Not free yet, but clearer, like the road ahead had fewer turns. I stopped by the grocery store, picked up milk, oranges, and a bunch of lilacs on clearance. The kind of things you buy when life finally feels steady, when you choose your own pieces instead of waiting for someone to hand them to you. At home I set the lilacs in a chipped vase by the sink. Their scent spread slowly, soft and sure. I hung my coat over the chair, folded neatly, when my phone buzzed again. Mark. Mom, we really need to talk. You're not answering and it's making things worse. Please call me. The message was longer than usual, panic just starting to edge his words. But still no apology, no acknowledgement of what happened. Just discomfort at my silence. He wasn't sorry for forgetting me, only that I'd stopped filling the blanks. I stared at the screen, then turned it off again. That evening I took out the folders. Mark's, Emma's, and the trust packet, and locked them in my fireproof box, sliding it under the bed. Not to hide them, but because I was finished. Finished explaining, finished asking, finished waiting. I made lentil soup that night, carrots and garlic, measuring by instinct. I cooked for one, not for absence but for respect. For me. The soup was good. Later I sat on the porch wrapped in a shawl. The air was brisk, almost like something was shifting. As the streetlights clicked on, I remembered something I hadn't in years. Mark was 10, home with a split lip and muddy jeans. Another boy had shoved him at recess. He stood rinsing his hands at the sink, saying, "It's fine. It's nothing." I crouched beside him and said, "You're allowed to be hurt. It doesn't make you weak." I wished someone had said that to me. I had been hurt quietly for years, convinced endurance was a virtue. But it's not. Sometimes it's just delay, just the cost of silence. I sipped tea, letting the night press close. The lilacs swayed in a faint draft, violet in the dark. A dog barked somewhere down the street. A car door slammed. A laugh carried sharp and quick, a sound from another life. I stayed in mine. No waiting. No questions. Just belonging. It was late Friday afternoon when the knock came. I was folding warm towels at the kitchen table. 3 slow knocks, not the mailman, not a neighbor. Hesitant. I opened the door and there stood Jessica. Her hair looked too perfect, as if she'd brushed and sprayed it in the car. She wore heels too narrow for our sidewalks, a tote bag slung over one shoulder, and her face carried that familiar mix of performance and concern. "Irene," she said softly. "Can we talk?" I didn't answer at first, just stepped aside and let her in. She glanced around as if checking for dust, for signs of neglect. The house looked unchanged, yet the air inside felt different, and I think she sensed it too. I led her to the living room and she didn't sit until I did. Her tote landed neatly at her feet, hands folded in her lap, posture careful. "I know you're upset," she began, tone smooth, practiced. "This has all been a misunderstanding." "Nothing," I asked as she rushed on. "Greg thought your flight was Friday. That's what he told me. We didn't realize you'd already arrived." "And the photo?" I pressed. She blinked. "What photo?" "Thanksgiving. The one that said full house. All of you smiling at the table." Her eyes lowered. "That was just something I posted for the holiday. I didn't mean." "But you did," I cut in. Her head snapped up too fast. "Yes, but we need to move past this. The kids miss you. Greg's been calling. We're all concerned. You've shut us out." I let out a quiet breath. "No. I just stopped filling in the silence for you. That's not the same." Her mouth tightened. "I came because we want to make this right." I studied her then. The deliberate makeup, the restless posture, the way avoidance clung to her like perfume. "You didn't come to fix anything," I said calmly. "You came to see if I was still useful." He straightened. "That's not fair." "But it's true." She glanced at the hallway as if Greg might appear to rescue her from this talk. "I've given enough," I added, voice steady. "More than enough. And I've already decided where the rest of it goes." Her eyes narrowed. "I'm not angry, not bitter," I continued. "I'm simply done." "Irene," she said, voice clipped now, cooler. "This isn't like you." "No," I said, "it's like me now." She shifted. "Does Greg know you've made changes?" "I imagine he's starting to suspect." Her expression faltered. "And the house, your accounts?" "Handled," I replied. The silence between us thickened, settling like dust. Finally she stood, reaching for her tote. "I'm sorry you feel this way," she said, tone sharp now. I smiled faintly. "No. You're sorry I stopped accepting less than I deserve." She didn't respond, just walked to the door. At the threshold she hesitated. "Greg really is worried." "He should be," I said. "Not because I'm gone, but because I'm not coming back." The door closed with the softest click. I stood there for a long moment, hand still on the knob, the air humming with what had been said. Then I returned to the kitchen, folded the towels, lit a candle, made tea. Greg called once that evening. I let it ring, not out of spite but because the quiet finally belonged to me. Saturday came soft and calm. I woke early, not from obligation, but because my body had found its own rhythm again, free of anyone else's schedule. Outside, the morning sky was pale, offering nothing, promising nothing. I sat on the porch wrapped in the faded quilt draped over the wicker chair. Steam curled from my cup as a child's voice echoed down the street, followed by the clatter of a skateboard. Winter hovered, holding back but not for long. I thought about Jessica's visit, not with anger or regret, just curiosity, like recalling a scene from someone else's life. She hadn't come for peace, she came for control. The real victory wasn't in being right. It was in refusing to perform grace to keep others comfortable. That afternoon Emma called. Her voice was bright, warm. "Hi, Grandma. I'm on break. How's your week?" "Eventful," I said, sipping tea. "But steady." "Something happened," she guessed. "Jessica stopped by." "Oh," Emma sighed. "She and Greg wanted to make things right? They didn't." "I'm sorry." "Don't be." I wasn't surprised and I wasn't shaken either. She was quiet for a moment. Then softly, "You sound different." "Do I?" "Stronger." "I think I am." We talked about her patience, her paper, her cat knocking over a lamp. The little pieces that make a real life. When we hung up, there was no ache of absence. I felt connected. Later I sorted the spare room drawers. Not in haste, just ready to choose what mattered. I found old linens Emma might like and a pair of earrings once meant for Lila's 16th birthday. I held them for a long time, simple silver, classic. I'd imagined her wearing them before a school dance, but that moment was never mine to keep. I set them aside. Not bitterly, just finally. That evening I wrote again. Not a letter this time, just 2 lists. Things I no longer owed. Explanations, second chances to those who waste them, apologies for existing, a chair at a table that never had room, silence. Things I still had. My name, my peace, my home, my granddaughter's voice saying stronger. I folded the page, taped it to the inside of the cabinet under the sink, where I kept dish gloves and sponges. A strange place for strength, but real. That night I lit 2 candles, not because anyone was coming but because I was there. Fully. I spooned out my soup, sat alone and whispered, not for drama, just truth, "I'm still here." And I was. The first Sunday of December I decorated the porch. Just a pine wreath with a red ribbon and 2 strands of warm white lights. Not for neighbors, not for memory. For me. Inside, jazz floated from the radio while the kettle hummed. By sunset, Greg called again. This time I answered. "Mom." His voice thinner than I remembered. "I'm here," I said, calm. "I didn't think you'd pick up." "I know." There was a pause, longer this time. "I saw the paperwork. The trust, the changes. I thought you would." His breath caught. "I don't understand." "After everything." "Exactly," I interrupted. "After everything." "You mean the money?" "I mean the pattern. The forgetting. The late calls. The birthdays missed. The airport. The photo. That wasn't intentional. No, it was worse. It was convenient. You're punishing us." His voice sounded more like a hope than an accusation, as if waiting for me to deny it, fold, reassure him. "No. I'm releasing myself, from obligations, from one-way loyalties, from guilt I carried so long I forgot what lightness felt like." "I never thought it would come to this," he whispered. "I know. We're still your family." "No, Greg. I was your family. You haven't been mine in a long time." We ended it there. No yelling, no resolution. Just truth, quiet enough to echo for years. The next morning I mailed a package to Emma. Silver earrings wrapped in soft cloth, a copy of the trust and a note. "These are yours. Not because you asked but because you showed up. Wear them when you feel uncertain. You're never invisible here. Not then. Not now. Not ever." She called 3 days later, crying and laughing at once. "Grandma," her voice trembled, "I don't even know what to say." "You already did," I said softly. "The day you asked to visit. The day you came without needing a reason." That evening I lit the fireplace and let the warmth fill the room. Outside, the first snow drifted down, soft and slow, covering the quiet street. I sat watching, thinking about all the Thanksgivings before. The ones I cooked through pain, the ones I stayed silent at, the ones where I was only an afterthought. But this one was mine. No turkey, no fancy tablecloths, no second helpings. Just a walk, a diner booth, 1 slice of pie, and the clearest taste I'd ever known. Not bitterness. Freedom. If this story touched you, share it and hit follow. More stories like this are coming and you don't want to miss them. Someone out there needs to know they're not alone.